the economics department at Harvard. And he says that historically speaking, during good times, people are more generous. The people in power are more generous and do social change. And he gives an example. In the case of England,
in case of England, go ahead.
In the case of England, he gives the Second Reform Act of 1867, the Civil Service and Army Navy Reform Act of 1870, university tests in 1871, women's suffrage in 1918, and various post-World War I, World War II reforms. So,
well, thanks for Will for starting that off right off the bat. You be the judge. We're here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Will was doing a reading. What's the name of the book again, Will?
The Moral Consequences of Economic Growth.
There he is. The Moral Consequences of Economic Growth.
By Daniel Friedman, who is no relation.
I will pick up that book myself. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for You Be the Judge here. Every Wednesday at 6 p.m., I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Paul Dyer, and then my other two lovely co-hosts, Marylin, Pierre, and Judge Claudia Barber, which, by the way, we just had a fantastic evening last night. We'll get more into talking about that, but it's so lovely. We got to take a group picture. We'll share that one day. That we just so all over the map. So even though we know each other so well, we just don't get a chance to see each other all that much, do we, Marylin?
No, we don't. And yesterday, all three of us were actually in the same room, which I think it's the first time that has ever happened. So we recorded the historic moment and picture. Woo!
So
okay. I want to make sure. Okay, I'm not wearing the same thing that I wore yesterday. Okay, so
But no one here was there except for me, and my memory's not that good with women clothes, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Oh my gosh, it's a harsh world out there for women, and I'm one of those complainers. Why does this have to look like this? How come this doesn't have any pockets? Oh my gosh, these shoes hurt. Why does it take so long to get ready? Look at this. Yeah, believe me, I could go on and on and on and on. It's this society is so harsh to women. It's just unbelievable.
But I tell you,
what see Zanita shaking her head. Zanita, you shaking your head, right?
She's like, yeah.
Yeah.
But while we're in this great conversation in this a caucus meeting, we had our next governor was speaking to existence. Westmore was there, and Brooke Lieberman, who will win comptroller, I totally believe it. And a lot of the amazing people, Shanika Henson. We just had this little great political meeting and talking about what is and what's coming and what can be if we pull together via voting and pulling together and supporting each other. But while all this great information is coming by, what is my co-host doing in her lap? I love it. She was needle pointing or crochet. Were you crocheting?
I was knitting. And I find it easier to do than to sit on the psychiatrist's couch. I've got to keep my mind occupied, otherwise, because the speech that he gave yesterday, I heard a longer version of it Monday. So, just to keep from interrupting and say, no, this word sounds better than when you used it yesterday than the one that,
So
And also, I get to create beautiful objects that I then give out as gifts to friends, and they claim that they appreciate it. And I get to brag about how I am an award-winning knitter and all that kind of stuff.
So
It's a winning.
if you were sitting on the bench, when you get the chance to sit on the bench, will you be knitting?
When I'm working, I write a lot. Like when I'm in court, I'm writing down what people are saying.
Okay,
No.
okay. So
But there's nothing to write when I'm sitting there listening to the same speech for the 10th time, and going to as many
yes,
events as I do.
yeah.
And I actually enjoy that because I notice how things change just a little bit for different audiences. And I also notice how different audiences hold different politicians accountable. I think
Right.
that's one of the things that we need to talk
Yeah.
about as well, because it's not just vote and then wait until the next time it is for you to vote. It's vote and be very clear about what you're voting for, and let the person know why you're voting for them or why you're not voting for them, and then hold them accountable while they are in office, whether you vote for them or not, because they're still getting paid by your tax dollars. So you're still the employer for them.
So
And then
one of the things that recently happened since our last show that we can talk about today, I've been thinking about it because she died on the 8th, and I'm talking about Queen Elizabeth. She died on the 8th, and that was a Thursday. My question is for the many people who chime in. You can always chime into any of your question boxes or any of your social media. But when that monarch died, what do you think will change in the world? Because we can talk about colonialism because we couldn't. She was never voted for. She was just, it's a king and queen issue. It's a monarch. But do we ever talk about the British colonialism and colonization that they did around the world? And how come we never spoke about it as a country, but we looked at her in such high esteem? I'm kind of confused and conflicted, Marylin.
Well, I don't know how the rest of the people here feel about it, and we're going to go around and ask, but I personally never did. And I thought that it was weird how, one person gets to be born into this position and gets to, basically by virtue of birth, gets to have all of this power, whether they're deserving or not. And then, the more that I think about it, the worse I feel about it. I've heard in the past couple of weeks that they say that when Queen Elizabeth II took, I guess, was put on the throne, she had 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 6 people on the planet as her subject.
Correct.
I mean, just think about that.
I do think about that. It's something. It's disturbing.
It is disturbing. It is disturbing. And then on top of that, and some people say, yeah, but she was born into it, and so look at what has happened now. So many countries have won their independence, and
Wait a minute, they didn't win it. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
win their independence. It wasn't like a lottery pick. They had to literally fight for it.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I mean. Even though the language is imprecise and not what we should be using. But yeah, and then they were born free, so therefore they were born independent. They didn't have to win it. They just had to get it back from the people who took it away from them. But okay, having come from Haiti and having had my ancestors kick the French out, years before other people got their independence, this is something that we valued a whole lot. So the idea that somebody could then colonize, and even the word, I mean, it just sounds, colonization just sounds so demeaning. Having somebody come in and say, the resources from your country belong to us.
Right.
Your labor belong to us. Everything that you are belong to us. And it's just dehumanizing, and it's just not something that we, and in her situation, it didn't even matter that, you know, people were people. And even to this age, when you listen to Meghan Markle, I am not a big fan. I know some people in my household are huge fans. I've never watched her. I remember the first time that they said that Prince Harry was going to marry a black woman, and I was like, oh, where is she? What does she look like? Oh, it's Meghan Markle? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Meghan Markle, and she's standing right there. And I looked at her, was like, a black woman? You know, if I saw her in a crowd and they said take out a black woman, but that's neither here nor there. But the fact that the royal family would discriminate against her as a black person, I'm like, oh my gosh, why would they think of me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but isn't they discriminate against her because they're entrenched in colonization? I mean, it's hard to accept people when you used to control people. I mean,
it's deeper than that. It's a caste system that operates there,
right.
But it's also the fact that actually, I was listening to a reporter talk about the British as the procession was occurring this morning, and she said that British people are huge critics. I was like, they sure are. They have a whole bunch to say. I mean, a whole bunch to say, and they don't bite their tongue. And when you say somebody's a critic, you know, you're really saying that, you know, they're not speaking positive praise about people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they're not when it comes to Meghan Markle.
Well,
it's one thing to inherit something; it's another thing to continue it. Yeah, somebody was saying to me, "Yeah, but she inherited; she didn't know any better." Blah blah blah, and I'm like, "No, I can't accept that."
Who are you talking about? Who inherited what?
The Queen.
The Queen inherited her situation, and she didn't know any better. Yes, she inherited her situation, but I'm not sure that she didn't know any better. So I don't know the woman. I don't know what's in her heart. I don't know what's in her mind. I haven't paid that much attention to them because, frankly, I don't find them that interesting.
But we're talking about colonization. That's something that we refuse to ever have looked at, even though when she was alive, they still owned people. They owned countries. They still own countries. It's part of the monarch. That's disturbing to me. And I think we base a lot of our politics, even though we don't have a monarch system, we don't have a king and queen. I still think political leaders believe they can own certain things or aspects about the human life when it comes to people in the United States. I still think that's why certain places aren't doing as well as other places. I think that's part, and it seems like, well, what happened to all of our system? The Senate, the House, the legislature, the executive branch, the judicial branch. It's supposed to be split up so we can have this balanced system. But somehow, somewhere along the line, we're down this. It's not balanced anymore. It's the same. I think, Marylin, you're mute.
I know I'm mute, but I wanted, can I share this video with you? I was trying to ramp it up. Is it okay?
Yeah.
I love this. So, okay, let me share. And it will, I think, get us started on this conversation that we're having here. Let me, how do I make it larger? Here we go.
I can't believe it's Saturday Night Live in New York City.
Can you guys hear it?
Yeah, we can.
My name is Daniel Kaluuya. And first of all, I know you're hearing my accent and thinking, oh no, he's not black. He's British. Let me reassure you that I am black. I'm black and I'm British. Basically, I'm what the royal family was worried the baby would look like. People ask me, what's worse, British racism or American racism? Let me put it this way. British British racism is so bad, white people left. They wanted to be free. Free to create their own kind of racism. So that's why they invaded Australia, South Africa, and Boston. My family's from Uganda. My family's from Uganda. Anyone from Uganda here? That's my auntie. She is.
Yeah, but I just wanted to start that off because I think it's a perfect segue of what we're talking about. You know, like he said, he's what the royal family thought the baby was afraid that the baby was going to look like, meaning Meghan Markle's baby. If I'm thinking of her name, I apologize. And Prince Harry, you know, and then also, you know, British racism is so bad that white people live in South Africa.
And we know how
Australia and Boston.
Right. And we know what they did in South Africa. So
exactly. That's why I was queuing up the video because I thought that was just so hilarious.
Before we get into talking about last night in Westmore's talk, and I would like to talk about what he said for the country, I do also want to pull up a clip that's something that just came out. And let's see where that is on my. So this is what Illinois is now going to be beginning in January 1st, where it's non-detainable offenses. Now, with these attorneys here on this, aggravated battery, aggravated DUI, aggravated fleeing, arson, burglary, and people can read this. So, Marylin, I want your take, and Judge Claudia, Barber, and whoever attorneys are on this. What do you think about this non-detainable offenses beginning January 2023 in Illinois, and how horrible is this act? And it's called the SAFE Act.
Safe for whom?
Exactly.
Because I understand that I'm assuming this is pre-trial, so these people are presumed innocent. They haven't been found guilty of anything, right?
They have been. They've been detained. They don't hold them. So you get picked up for burglary, we don't hold you. When you get picked up for kidnapping, they don't hold them. You get picked up for second-degree murder, you're not being detained for none of this. So, yes, wow. you committed the crime of second-degree murder. We still let you go.
Well, I mean, isn't this pre-trial stage? So the person has only been arrested, and they have to appear before either and this first of all, this is Illinois. This is not the state of Maryland.
Right, it's Illinois, right? But it's coming to other states. Other states are adopting the same principle.
May I be heard? May I be heard for a minute?
Actually, Will, go ahead.
Okay. I think this means that if they would let you, if they would release you on bail, if you had the money and you're poor, they will release you in the same way that they would release somebody, rich person with money, I think.
Well,
I think it's a bad idea. And maybe it's because this is the conservative part of me.
Well, I have
I think this is the public safety part of you, because I understand that these people have only been
as of January
alleged
charged, and it's an allegation.
And it's an allegation, but the only one that I could think of actually is burglary. That if somebody commits burglary, is alleged to have committed,
even though it's a property crime. Here's my
exactly,
concern.
as opposed to the other ones, which are actual physical.
One of the 1st, 2023, the following things will go into effect, and people need to be aware of this. It abolishes cash bail for almost every offense. This includes, but isn't limited to, kidnapping, armed robbery, second-degree murder, drug-induced homicide, aggravated DUI, threatening a public official, and aggravated fleeing and eluding. Offenders released on electronic monitoring have to be in violation for 48 hours before law enforcement can act. They could almost drive to Alaska before we can even look for them. It denies victims their constitutional rights. And keep this in mind, businesses and homeowners. Officers will no longer be able to remove trespassers from your residence or your businesses. Someone could decide to live in your shed, and all we can do is give them a ticket. You have to decide what level of force is required to remove them and whether or not it's legal. This is a massive threat to the residents of Oral Park, Cook County, and Illinois.
So that
Yeah, I definitely agree with the mayor because I think this has gone too far. I understand, Will, what you were saying about, if they would let somebody with money out on bail, then they should also let these people out on bail. But I'm thinking that, if these people have been accused of what they have been accused of, and I understand we have this discussion about how police sometimes accuse people of doing things that they haven't actually done and so on and so forth. But let's say that there are no grudges to bear and there are no isms and we live in a perfect world. I still would not want people who have been accused of these violent acts to be out on bail because there's no cooling off period.
Well, there's a strong argument that oftentimes law enforcement makes, and that is that when we arrest these people on burglary and you release them on their own recognizance or even on cash bail, they go back out and commit other crimes. Now, there was a horrible or horrific crime that happened in Maryland where young people were released and they robbed a home and they ended up killing a police officer up in northern Baltimore County. And it resulted in not just the young person who ran over the police officer being charged, but all the connected people who were part of that burglary, they too got charged with capital murder. Wow. So, if he had been given, not released on his own conscience or not released at all, even if it was on some type of cash bail, then maybe that crime would have been avoided.
But we know that.
May I be heard once again?
Yes, Will.
What I heard was the mayor say that what Illinois has done is if we would have released you on bail for the crime that you were committed, we will release you without bail. Now, if they would not have released the person on bail or with bail, then they would not release him even without bail.
But
okay. See, that makes sense.
I would have voted for that.
No, but
I would have voted for that.
But what they're saying,
it becomes a financial issue rather than a safety issue.
But what they're saying is it's non-detainable, so they're not detaining them for these crimes.
As of January 1st, 2023, the following things will go into effect, and people need to be aware of this. It abolishes cash bail for almost every offense. This includes, but isn't limited to, kidnapping, armed robbery.
But that's what the mayor is saying. Mm-hmm. He's saying it abolishes cash bail.
Right.
So it becomes a financial issue that somebody is not sitting in jail just because they cannot come up with $50 or they don't have a friend on the outside who could give them $50 so they could put up a cash bail.
Now see, here's the distinction. Mm-hmm. In the case of Sandra Bland, she should not have been required to post bail for those charges.
Yeah.
Where we believe that it's questionable what the law enforcement officer charged her with. Mm-hmm. So, she should have not been she would have lost her life the way she did by just being held in custody and not being able to come up with a cash bail for her release. But this is where prudent judges, come into scrutiny as to what are you doing and what discretion are you exercising.
Mhm.
So to me, the law should be tweaked because I can't see how somebody kidnapping somebody would be released for any reason.
I can't either, but it's
But-
at least
but
it's
the
not
way
a
he said it,
financial.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
at least it's not a minimum financial amount that they have to meet in order to be released. And I think that's what the law is getting geared at. I don't think many judges are going to let these people who have been accused of these crimes out either. But I think what the law is saying is if you had money to post bail,
So,
we're not going to let you, languish in jail until your trial,
Marilyn,
just because you don't have any money.
so Marilyn, on the bottom here it says, under the new law, after being charged with the crimes listed, those arrested would be released without bail pending a court date. So it says second-degree murder. I will be released after being arrested after I commit second-degree murder with a ticket to appear in court. This does not
Yeah.
seem healthy.
The way it is, it doesn't seem healthy either, but the way Will said that he understands it, that makes sense.
Yeah, but
Because
that's not what it's saying.
That's
Will,
what
what do you
he
want to
said.
say about that?
It said they abolished bail.
Cash bail.
Will, under here it says, I'll read it on the bottom. It says, under this new law, after being charged with the crimes listed, those arrested would be released.
He's overstating the case.
Well, how is it overstating? You're going to be released.
But it's not automatic.
If you commit the exact same crime and you're rich and they say we will, if you post bail we will let you out, they now say you don't have to post bail. If they would have said whether you're rich or not, we're going to keep you in jail, we're not going to let you post bail, then they're going to let the guy, the poor guy stays in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Rich guy and poor guy are treated alike.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, I would have voted for that.
I don't see how this is going to, because to most of the communities that's going to be truly affected by this is lower economic communities.
You mean the
Right
community's gonna be impacted?
Absolutely. We're not
Mhm.
talking about a rich white guy who gets drug-induced homicide and he goes home. We're often talking about a drug-induced person that's living on the street that commits a crime. He gets released. He's going to commit another crime.
Right now,
necessarily.
a poor guy, and let's make him a main wage earner. A poor black main wage earner is arrested. He has a minimum wage job. He can't raise bail.
Okay.
And he sits for a year or 2 years or God knows how long.
Horrible.
See? And there's an awful lot of that.
Right.
Khalif
This is
Brown,
what this law is trying to remedy. Because
well, the statute,
Okay.
yeah.
that's what the statute is trying to remedy, that you're not languishing in jail just because you don't have enough money to make bail. If they would have let some rich guy out under these charges, under these circumstances, we're going to let you out so that you could go back to your job and support your family rather than wait months and months and months in jail. In the meantime, your family's not being supported.
I just don't feel, I think this pendulum swing, I agree with what you're saying. I think it comes down to what Judge Claudia Barber has been saying. It depends a lot about these judges' prudency. Does this fall into the lap of per judge to say, yeah, you go home, or yes, you be detained? Or is it no matter what, everyone goes home?
Okay, let me give you an example of, I think, what this statute is trying to remedy. I forgot the young man's name, the one who was accused of stealing a backpack in New York. and he was in Rikers.
That's the Khalif Browder case I was saying.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he could not come up with bail. And so he spent all this time in jail waiting for a trial. And his trial date would come up and they would say, if you plead guilty, we will release you that day. And he said, I didn't do it. I'm not pleading guilty. So kept on going and going and going until, they finally released him. And they found out that he, in fact, was not guilty because he didn't do what he was accused of doing. But the psychological toll that took on him, left him so traumatized that he ended up committing suicide.
Right.
I think that's what this law is trying to remedy. They don't want people to be in jail just because they don't have enough money to come up with bail.
So what about the people who aren't the Cleve Browders and who are criminalistic, who do get released, who ends up killing more people?
I don't think judges are going to do that because I think.
But they have already.
We don't know.
But they have.
We don't know. We don't
judges
know.
are humans and they're not perfect. But I don't think most judges are going to look at these allegations and say, "Oh yeah, why don't you who could put up, let's say, $100,000, you could walk out on a second-degree murder." Judges are not going to do that because
maybe not. But see, here's the thing: maybe not second-degree murder, but
that's one of the.
Yes, but
non-detainable charges.
But like I said in the other example, this story that I'm sharing with you about the cop that was killed,
right?
She was run over, and it was horrific, and the community was outraged. But then of course when you traced it down, it was some judge who released the child or the youth for burglary. And it was during that time period where he was released and waiting for that trial when he committed this capital offense of killing a police officer. And it of course it created outrage in the community. And
of course it should have, but I think that the way judges think about things is they think about the one exception. All this other time that they let people who were alleged to have committed burglary out on bail, nothing happened, so there was no reporting. This one time something happened, and that now defines the judge's career. And so they think about that when they think about whether or not they're going to let somebody out on bail, because they know it's the one time that somebody goes out there and does something, that's what's going to come back to them. It's not all these other times that they let people go on because they have their lives, they have people to support and things of that sort. So they're extremely conservative, and I just don't see a judge putting his or her career on the line for people who have been alleged to have committed these horrific crimes.
I have to go in and out because I have 2 other meetings, but I will be back. As always, I enjoy this.
Well, thank you very much, Judge Barber. We enjoy you.
So,
so Will, you have your hand up? Is that?
No.
Before we cut off, does anyone have anything to say about what we were talking about? Evangelist Minor, is this clear this up for you? Because I know you had exacerbated that this is not good. You didn't feel this is good. But now that you have it explained to you, do you feel better, or is it still it's still cloudy for you?
Excuse me. It's still cloudy, and I agree. I don't see how a judge will allow a person who's been charged with murder to walk free, or a kidnapper to walk free. Maybe someone who's been arrested and detained for marijuana or something like that. Yeah, but not these other charges. I don't know. I feel that if that should happen, there will be more crimes in Illinois, more crimes, more trauma. And I hope that law doesn't pass through the metropolitan area.
Yeah, I think that the law was passed in order to say to people, look, we're not going to punish you just because you don't have money to post bail. I think that's basically what the law is. And like I said, I don't care how much money that somebody comes up with. I doubt that somebody who's been accused of, second degree murder, for instance, is going to be let out on bail by a judge, because if that person flees the country, and that's also something else, that person who could come up with that bail probably has the ability to flee the country. And the judge knows that as well. And the judge knows that the one time that I do something and someone, that I rule one way and someone doesn't follow what they're supposed to do, I'm the one who's going to be left holding the bag. So I don't think that they're going to say no, no, no.
But
Just,
but we
go
know.
ahead
I
and,
just think, if I could say something,
Oh,
good
go ahead,
evening,
Teresa.
everybody. I was just thinking, when I was listening to the video, I just think it was very elementary. Everybody, correct me if I'm wrong, but everybody has to go through a bail hearing. And at that hearing is decided whether to grant bail. Now, to me, what the person on the video didn't show was all of the steps. Maybe those would be under consideration for not having bail. And just like you said, Marylin, it is up to the judge, and it's about equity. It's about Black people being in the prison, in the criminal justice system, which in 2022 is 2.2 million, and 38% of those are Black people.
So
So that's a lot of Black people in that system, which really, when you talk about bail and how it just sucks out any resources that can be used for other things that are not used, that can be used because people are posting bail for these crimes. So I think it is about equity. It is about equity. But it's also, I know that you have to have a bail hearing in order to get bail. So it's not like they're just gonna let anybody out because they fall under this particular statute.
So Teresa, explain when it says would be released without pending a court date, or a charge with a crime listed, those arrested would be released without bail. Without bail. So where does a bail hearing come in that?
I'm not sure.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah,
If I could
Marilyn, you
answer
answer that. You're an attorney, but I just think that there's more to it than them putting this up this particular PowerPoint slide.
Yeah, there is more to it. And I'm looking at this slide, and I think it's quite misleading. Okay, without bail means that there's been a bail hearing, and a judge has heard that this person has connections to the community. This person is not a flight risk. This person is a person who is supporting his or her family, and the family is in need of that support. This is the first time that they've ever been involved, and a judge has to hear so much in order to put to set bail for anyone. So that's what the bail hearing is. So after the judge hears so much, sometimes the judge hears, oh, this person owns $1 million house, in which case, the judge says, okay, well, then I'll set bail at, 250,000, 500,000, or $1 million. Just put your house up, which means that if you skip bail, you lose your house. You understand? Yes, but if somebody has no asset, you can't say, put $50, put 50, I'll set the bail at $50. Maryland has just passed a law about 4 or so years ago, where they were just as a matter of equity, they wanted to make sure that people were not in jail pre-trial just because they couldn't come up with $100 for bail, for instance. And so they said, all things being equal, if this person doesn't have $100, release them on their own recognizance if they've met every other requirement.
Right.
But also
the Washington Post. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Marylin. But if you look at what you just put up, Dr. Dyer, when you put it up, who's the source? consider the source that is bringing this in their abbreviated form
Yes.
to
Yes,
to the
I
table as
thought
well.
about that too. Yeah, I thought about that too, especially the part about, threatening a public official. I mean, no judge is going to be, letting people out, because the judge is like, I'm a public official. This is Illinois. Don't forget what happened to the governor a couple of months ago
Right.
in Illinois. So we should. I thought about that too. The last time I looked at it, I'm like, who is bringing that out? Because this is very inflammatory.
Well, I
And
know I can't. I did see it on Illinois's judicial page too. I could have just clipped the art from there too, but I didn't. This was easier. So I know they took it from there. It's the same thing, and the news article put their corner on there. So I did see that, Teresa. I agree with you. It does depending on where the source come from, but I did see it on the Illinois's thing when I heard about it. But I what I like about you, be the judge, and this is what's so great, is that with the legal minds we have here, it makes sense to me that something was explained that I did not get. And that is that pretrial bail hearing. That is never put into the article. Like for us common folk, that before someone can be released, there's still someone's going to hear something. But I did know that there's cases in New York where people were let go and they did commit crime that same day, and they were let go for a violent crime they committed, and they got a ticket to have a hearing. So they got picked up for attempted murder, and then when they let go, they did commit a murder. So
okay, I've got to address that because okay, judges aren't perfect, and
no,
nobody could predict. I mean, you could look at someone, and then some people claim that they could look at someone in someone's eyes and see their soul. I don't know. I'm not judging, but I I know that oh gosh, Bruce Wright, yeah, Judge Bruce Wright, who has since passed, he was he was given the nickname Cut 'em Loose Bruce, and he was a judge in New York, and the reason why he was given that nickname of Cut 'em Loose Bruce is because he would release a lot of people on their own recognizance. And so he was criticized for that because they were like, well, how dare you do that? Because it's dangerous for people out there. These people are going to go and commit crimes and so on and so forth. But when they looked at his record and they looked at the record of the so-called people who, were tougher on the bail requirements, they found that it was comparable. So a lot of the people who would otherwise be in jail because they couldn't come up with a couple $100 to post bond, they were out. Well, they were more likely to be out under if they were before Judge Wright, but it doesn't mean that they were more dangerous. It doesn't mean that his record showed that more people committed crimes. Yes, there's always going to be, this person who has committed crimes that a judge let through. But as I stated before, judges are not perfect when we don't have a perfect system. So there will always be that example that happens. But but people don't see the other side. They don't see all these people
right,
who have just been accused of doing something,
and it's been locked up.
who are in jail, and their whole lives basically sometimes have been ruined because if they're some people their lives and their situations are so fragile that if they're in jail for the weekend, they lose their job.
My life's that
And
fragile.
mhm.
Yeah, I don't know how many lives aren't that fragile. I know my life's that fragile. You lock me up for a
Well,
weekend, it's gonna hurt a lot.
some people have a bigger cushion. I don't know. Oh gosh, have you guys seen the movie Parasite?
No.
It won best movie a couple of years ago. It's a movie that's in Korean. Yeah, uh-huh. Oh my gosh, it is a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece, but it shows the different class levels. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but something happens between these two families. One of them is extremely well off, and the other family is extremely poor. Something happens, and the next day, the well-off family, you know, their lives are back to normal again. It really doesn't, this catastrophic thing that happens doesn't really affect their lives because they have the financial and other abilities to withstand it. On the other hand, the poorer family, oh my gosh, their lives are devastated by what has happened. And then that's what I mean by fragile. There's some people who have a cushion, and with
Yeah.
that cushion, they could bear loss and some other significant things better than those who don't have that cushion.
I know Evangelist Minor had her hand up, and I just have to state, I don't know. I know personally, if I think about it, I don't know if my life could sustain a jail sentence for a weekend.
Yeah, and a lot of people are in that situation, and I think that's what that law is trying to address. And when somebody puts it in the manner that they put it, and it seems to me that they're trying to get uh, some people instigated by it, because I mean, we all care about public safety. Even the person who's out there robbing somebody doesn't want to be robbed himself. Right? So we all care about public safety, and the way it was put was like, oh, these people don't care about public safety. Look at what they're doing, and I don't think that's what the law is.
Evangelist Minor?
Yes. With the new transition that's taking place with the new king, do you all think there will be a wealth shift for the economy and prices will be reduced?
So, if I heard you right, with the transition to the new king of the new monarch, do you think there'd be a wealth shift with the money?
Yes.
No.
No. Didn't they say
No.
one of the princes just got $1 billion property or something like that from some other family member?
All it does is circulate amongst themselves.
Yep.
Power concedes nothing.
Nothing.
And this has
Without
been
a
going
demand.
on for
It
a
never has
long
and it never
time.
will.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
I'm glad you're so hopeful, Evangelist Minor, because it's nice to be hopeful, but the realistic is, like Teresa says, power, and Marylin says, power concedes nothing. You have to take power.
Well, it concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will.
Never will. It can't.
Who's that, Nietzsche? Will, who's that? That's Nietzsche, right?
No, Frederick Douglass.
That's Frederick Douglass. Oh my gosh. Okay, thank you. Frederick Douglass. Thank you, Holly. Yeah. Yep, you're right. That's Frederick Douglass. And yeah, they're if anything, I think they're probably going to be better at hiding it.
I do
But
have
it's gonna keep circulating in that same family.
I do have something that I've been thinking of since she passed. I believe she held a lot of information that she may have died with. I think whoever she could have told, might have told, it may not have told many of a lot of things. And I think now it's time for the wolves that she held at bay, for whatever reason, are going to come. That's what I think.
Well, we have to also continue to consider the role of Parliament in this whole scheme of things.
Right, but don't you believe, Teresa, she had that, she didn't control the laws of the country. You're great, but she still had that phone call. And I still think a lot of things Parliament may have done or not done or didn't continue to do probably came from a phone call.
They talked about that. They talked about how she has had 15 prime ministers.
Yes.
And how every week they have an audience with her.
That's right.
And how she would give them advice and things of that sort. But nobody has ever said, hey, the Queen gave me advice, or this is the advice that the Queen has given me. So nobody knows whether she was completely bonkers or whether she was this great scholar who, would give this sage advice.
Well,
and
I think you want your country to believe it's a democratic country, even though you had a queen that's still sitting on her throne. I mean, so you have to give the appearance of some democratic movement. At least, I mean, you don't want the country to go like she is still ruling everything. But let's not fool us. She still had a huge. I mean, her saying to a prime minister carried weight. It had to have. It just.
I mean, if I were British, I'd be upset because here I am paying for all these people to live this lavish lifestyle out of my tax dollars, and I'm looking around and I'm like, I have a semi-detached, and they've got all these palaces with rooms that they couldn't possibly use. You know, I think I'd have issues with that. What do you think,
But
Evangelist
the
Minor?
British people love tradition more than because they've had this fight for a long time about supporting the monarchy as opposed to doing away with it. And they're like, on the other hand, I like tradition. I like all of this. So we're going to keep it for the most part. There are, of course, people who don't like it, but the fact that they have all this attention and, shown on the light is shown on them. I think the people like that for some.
I mean, and Zanita, you make a very good point, but I just couldn't, you know, be happy with the idea of supporting, let's say, the Kardashians. Let's say the Kardashians were the ruling power and they were the kings and queens or whatever. I cannot imagine that, every whatever I'm going to go out of my pocket to pay taxes to support that family, especially.
Wait a minute, we do that now, Marilyn. We do that now. Who are you kidding?
We do that now. Well, and I'm not happy about that either. If you're talking about, how we subsidize rich people's lifestyle,
yes.
I'm not happy about that either. I complain about that as well. So I'm just continuing my complaint.
But what
Will,
you
did you want to say? Sorry, Zanita, go ahead.
Oh, I said what you said earlier about why we don't talk about the colonization
Right.
by the British because we're a product of Britain.
We
are just their offspring who took it to another level. We learned and we made it worse. So the South Africans had said we from the Americans the playbook on how to discriminate, how to differentiate. So yeah, we're just a product of them and it's in their DNA. That's what I believe.
I think it's in a lot of DNA that we are still the fabric of even how our country is being ran. I think we're still being colonized in certain aspects. We don't call it colonizations. We call it economic depression. We call it people who can live very well and some people don't live. I still think it's colonization because I still think there's corporations that do, right? And there's corporations that can, and there's corporations that control. So you have do, can, and control. And then you have other people who cannot and will not and have to work for the corporations. That's colonization to me.
Yeah, it is in another form. And since we're talking about that, I'm remembering Isabel Wilkerson, who talked in her book Caste. She talks about how America did such a great job in terms of controlling its people and the methods that they used that the Germans came over here to learn the methods and they thought that it was so harsh they didn't want to try it back there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the Germans were, thought that America was harsh.
Well, it's also how apartheid in South Africa was based on the what Jim Crow, the Jim Crow South.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Wilkerson didn't talk about South Africa so much, but if they looked at the apartheid in South Africa, they would see the same blueprint that was in the South.
Evangelist Minor?
Yes,
go ahead.
Yes, we're living in the last days. We're all witnessing prophecy being fulfilled. The scripture says the wealth is set up for the just. And I'm hoping that with this transition, the just is justified and the wealth is set up. And we shall see a breakthrough from this new transition.
Yeah, I think the breakthrough is going to be a lot of bloody people in the streets. I think that's the breakthrough that's going to happen. I just don't see any way around it. And I'm not a cry wolf person or a fear or anything. I just think there's too many people who are very has anxiety driven, Too many people, I think, we're separated by idealistic ideas that we don't have conversations. We don't have conversations like, think about your week. Do you have conversations like this you have here on Wednesday on the average? I often try to, but a lot of people are reluctant to because they just don't. They and I'm a great person to be like, I want to hear what you have to say. It doesn't matter if it's for or against. I want to hear your thoughts. And I think I bring a lot of thoughts to I heard it this week. So, but a lot of people don't have these conversations. And I'm in companies or public places where people are only talking about things they agree with. That is not a conversation. I mean, if we can only talk about the rest of us what we agree with, then how are we understanding each other? And we're not. I still
Yeah,
hear I still hear white people say those people, right? I hear black people say those people. They're not even mentioning, the cultural difference. They're just talking about the separation of people. That's not good. That's not healthy. Marilyn?
I think that's one of the things that I appreciate most about having the conversations that we have. We are very respectful of one another and what other people think, and we actually listen, and we are not afraid to tell them that we don't agree with them, or we agree with this part and that no, not that part. And nowadays it's very difficult to have a conversation with some people, because if you don't agree with them 100%, then you're evil, you're bad, you're ignorant, I mean, all sorts of negative, you know adjectives is what they use to describe you. They cannot stand the thought that somebody just doesn't agree with them 100%. If you agree with them 99%, that's not enough. You've got to be 100% or else.
So
Yeah.
before we take off here on You Be the Judge every Wednesday at 6 p.m., you can always hear us on iHeartRadio, Apple, or where you get all your podcast tunes. Just put in You Be the Judge, Bridges Live Presents. Marilyn, I want you to give us a small recap of what Westmore was talking about. Not only did you stipulate that you said that you have heard it similar often, several ways, but could you get a recap of the people who was not there, which is the many of us, and the people who are listening live or recorded? What is he saying? What's the next step for Maryland, and what does he have in store for Maryland? For Maryland, not Maryland.
It's my state. I own it. So that's why they named it after me. Monday morning, the District 18 Democratic Breakfast Club had Westmore as their guest. And yesterday evening, the Anne Arundel County NAACP had Westmore. Westmore is had Westmore as their guest, and Westmore, as we all know, is the Democratic candidate for governor. I hope that 3 times is the charm, because we lost 2 gubernatorial races in the past 3 elections, and I'm really hoping that this time we get Westmore, not only because the other candidate is, you know, is very admiring of Donald Trump, and that worries me, but also because it seems that Westmore is a is somebody who really has hope for Maryland and really will try hard to achieve the hopes that he has for Maryland. And I think that this is something that we should look forward to, and to make sure that he, is able to get to a position. But we do have to hold his feet to the fire when he gets to that position, because people tend to forget, what they say out on the campaign trail. I'm not saying I don't know the man well enough to say that he would. I'm just saying that, we have to do our part as well. You know,
So what do you, I guess so. So what do you think? What was the one thing you keyed on that he has said that he will do for Maryland?
well, being I am who I am and what I've been going through in the past couple of years, he did talk about the judges and his concern that because Claudia was at the meeting as well. Judge Barber, who just left us a couple of minutes ago, she was there. She asked the question about the judiciary, and he did say that this is something that he would look into and make sure that it reflects not only the state of Maryland, but it reflects what he wants to see happening in the state. So that's good. He talked about the environment, and to tell you the truth, I would Maryland, as Delegate Gabe Acevedo was talking about in a meeting I just had, was talking about Maryland being a coastal state and how we should really be worried about the environment because with the water rising level and things of that sort, being a coastal state, we're going to feel it a whole lot sooner than the people in the Midwest, for instance. So we've got to keep our eyes on the environment and make sure that we well, make sure that we do what we can to slow down climate change.
One of the things I know I liked what he said last night was that we do have to pull together. We do have to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable because this is an opportunity to bring our state together because we have been fractured. And the other thing I like what he says is it's about the mental health issue. We have been struggling as a country and as a state. And we definitely need to be more focused or hyper focused on how we send out our police officers or our responders or even people who are getting called for mental health issues or for issues. A lot of them are mental health. So what I am going to say is, let's say Westmore does not win. That would be the last time I will be living in Maryland. And I'll tell you why. It's because...
Can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Yeah.
I really thought that the question that you asked about the veterans and the mental health issue was excellent. Yes, I actually thought that was the best part because he really understood that question really well, not only because he is former military himself, but he, as well as everybody else in the room, was thoroughly impressed with you having 55 service jumps. I mean, that's incredible.
55 combat jumps. I've had more.
55 combat jumps.
Yeah.
Wow, that's even more incredible. We just couldn't believe it. And like he said, I can't believe your knees are still holding well after all these jumps. 55 combat jumps.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I hope you have the Medal of Freedom for that or something like that because that's excellent.
I do. I actually have 2 Bronze Stars.
Oh wow, very good. Ooh.
Yeah.
Very bow to you.
If you leave Maryland.
What?
Yes, please continue.
So so what I am going to say, if Dan Cox wins, the day he wins is the day I move out of Maryland. And
where?
Out of this country. I'm done. I'll be done. I'll be done. And the reason why is because Maryland will fully understand who they really are and what they have always been. And they cannot hide it anymore. What they've always thought that they were this liberal this democratic that, and how they felt about communication and community, it would be, my language, full of shit. Because Dan Cox, what he is as a person and what he stands for, he should not even be allowed to run, let alone win a governor's seat. That's all I'm saying. I think Westmore's a better person, but I think even if he comes absolutely somewhat close, Maryland tells on themselves.
Yeah, there's an issue about that as well because there's some states where people who were involved in the January 6th insurrection, some people call it an insurrection, some people call it defense of America, whatever language you ever want. But there's some states where they are not allowing people to do that because they see that as an act of treason.
Right.
But in Maryland, here he is. So I understand how you feeling about that. And I remember when I heard them announce that Donald Trump was the winner of the presidential race in 2016, I said, okay, I will not be leaving the country in the next 4 years. And I didn't, because I just knew what would happen if I left the country, because I know what TSA does to me
Right.
every time I fly.
So we'd like to thank everyone for listening to You Be the Judge. We'll see you next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Please be safe, be kind, be compassionate, and be active. We all want you to see you here next Wednesday. If you can't be here, let us know that you're okay. We love you and we thank you. Thank you, Marylin.
We love you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for joining us.
Thank you,
Bye. See you
everybody.
guys next week.